Which wide receivers should you be starting or sitting in Week 7 of the fantasy football season? Stay tuned and find out. Welcome back, Endgame community. I'm Pierre, he is Chris, and we're going to talk about every wide receiver that matters for fantasy football, going game by game to tell you whether you should be starting or sitting them. First, don't forget there are some big names on bye this week. We have the Vikings, the Rams, the Buffalo Bills, and the Eagles on bye. Let's talk about those wide receivers you don't have to worry about. If you have them, you're going to start them. Devontae Adams, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Mike Evans, Deebo Samuel, CeeDee Lamb, Michael Pittman. All right, let's start with the Thursday night game. We're going to talk about the Saints and the Cardinals. Still a lot of banged up receivers in New Orleans. Looks like Michael Thomas and Jarvis Landry will be out again, but Chris Olave might be back. So assuming he clears the protocol for concussion and he plays, is he a must start?
I think he is. This Cardinals defense, nothing to be afraid of. We're not sure quite yet if it'll be Jameis or Dalton, but I don't think it matters. If Olave is cleared, which it looks like he will be, you got to start him.
I mean, Olave was bordering on must-start territory even before all those injuries. And like you said, either quarterback, Dalton's been fine. Winston was really good for Olave. At this rate, you have to start him. Now, things are definitely different for Arizona in the wide receiver core. Hollywood Brown is out. Some people thought it would be for the season. Right now, we know it's for several weeks. So you're not starting Hollywood, but welcome back DeAndre Hopkins. Does this make him somebody you kind of just have to throw back in your lineup?
Yeah, I'm not going to put him in must-start category because, again, this guy hasn't played football, all season, just jumping right out there. But given the state of the Cardinals pass catchers, I think he's a good start.
Yeah, he is a good start. Look, the Saints defense has been giving up a lot more yardage than last year. So I think Hopkins is a pretty solid low-end wide receiver 2 this week. And then Rondale Moore, well, he remains relevant because of the Hollywood injury. How do you think he'll do this week?
I mean, he'll probably do what he does. Always capable of a big play. So I'm not a must start, I think. But if you need him as a flex, you can start him.
Yeah, I think he's just flex worthy, but he's never a guy I'm just going to be in love with. But if you need him, go ahead. Cleveland Browns are going to go to Baltimore to take on the Ravens. Let's start with Amari Cooper. You got to feel good about him this week, right?
Yeah, Cooper's one of those guys you just have to have in your lineup every single week. He can bust, but he can also boom, so got to have him in your lineup.
Definitely got to have him in your lineup, especially this weekend in this matchup. Donovan Peoples-Jones, he makes noise from time to time. I think we should talk about him because, again, this Baltimore defense has given up a lot of passing yards. Is he on the flex radar?
Yeah, but one thing, though, this Baltimore defense is getting better. It's getting healthier, so I mean, he's always got big play potential. I can't do it. I tried to put him in the flex category, but I can't do it. I'm sitting him. I can't do it.
Yeah, he's kind of a desperation play. And you look at it, Baltimore gave up a ton of passing yards the first couple of weeks, but the last 3, they've actually clamped down a lot. So don't get carried away. You could probably sit DPJ. Now, Rashad Bateman, don't know his status. It's too early for us to say. But what if he comes back? Do you play?
I mean, I think you have to because this Ravens team looks like they need Rashad Bateman right now. So always has potential for a big play, for a touchdown. So I think if he's back, you have to start him.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the passing game is definitely taking a hit. And so Bateman is a guy I always feel good about. It's a good matchup. If he plays, he's good to go. I'm going to put him in my lineup. If he doesn't go, do you pivot to Devin Duvernay?
No, not pivoting into Devin Duvernay. I mean, well, what are we expecting from this guy at this point? Not starting him.
No, I mean, there's always maybe a chance, but look, even last week, he was being outproduced by guys like Isaiah Likely. I can sit Duvernay. Bucs taking on the Panthers. You still have to keep rolling with Mike Evans every week. What about Chris Godwin? He did pretty good last week. Is he a must start?
Yeah, I think you do have to start him. I mean, I don't know what's going on with this Tampa Bay offense, but they're just dunking down the field, which is good for Chris Godwin. So I think if you got Chris Godwin, you got to start him.
Agree. No reason to be worried about this matchup. You keep going with Godwin. Russell Gage, I mean, I guess he's still relevant. He did get some end zone targets, which I thought was interesting and slightly frustrating. Do you have any interest in Russell Gage?
No, I just can't do it. I can't. I need to see more from Russell Gage. I can't start him.
Agree. I mean, if you really need somebody to plug in at wide receiver, maybe, but no, I don't think they're going to have to pass the ball too much this week. So I would sit Russell Gage. And then, I have to ask DJ Moore.
No, cannot start DJ Moore.
No. Who's the quarterback for Carolina these days anyways? Maybe Jacob Eason, I think, this week. Yeah, you can pass DJ Moore. The Falcons going to take on the Bengals. Drake London, man, what happened to those first couple of weeks when he was dominating? Can you start him against the Bengals?
I can't do it. Bengals defense underrated. I know they did give up, some big plays to the Saints. Well, they gave up one big play to Traquan Smith. Most of it was in the running game, but this Falcons team just doesn't throw the ball. They just don't throw it enough, so I can't start Drake London.
And I think, maybe they will have to throw it going on the road to Cincy. They won't have positive game script. But I don't know. I mean, I can't trust this Atlanta offense, period. So London is a guy you could flex, but there's so much risk. So the ceiling is obviously there, but the floor is not. So flex if needed. And then we know Chase and Higgins now back to must start. He's healthy. Tyler Boyd, maybe against Atlanta. Could he do like a Brandon Ayuk type thing?
No, I don't think so. Brandon, he's not out there, with just Debo. He's got Chase and Higgins and Hayden Hurst. And, even last week, Higgins wasn't 100%. And, Boyd was fine, but nothing special. I can't start Tyler Boyd this week with Chase and Higgins both healthy. Can't start him.
Yeah, look, Boyd kind of got the squeaky wheel treatment because he wasn't getting targeted. He did get targeted, this past week. I think he goes back to being not so relevant. They're probably not going to have to pass the ball a ton, so you can sit Tyler Boyd. Lions take it on the Cowboys. Amon-Ra St. Brown, the sun god, hopefully is back and healthy. Is he an instant start if he plays?
Yeah, if he plays and you've got him, you start him.
You got to. I don't think he'll be on a snap count. I mean, he's had a whole week to rest. Should be good to go. And if he plays, you still have to play him. What about Josh Reynolds? He's a guy who's been getting some targets here and there. Can he do anything against the Cowboys?
I mean, maybe, but this is a tough defense. Their outside corners are pretty good. I'm going to sit Josh Reynolds.
Yeah, I am too. Detroit's offense, don't forget, before the bye, looked really bad. So, yeah, Reynolds would be an only in plus matchups or if St. Brown is hurt type of deal. And then what about Michael Gallup? This is Detroit's defense we're talking about. That could be a good thing for him.
Yeah, and all reports sound like Dak will be back this week. So not a must start because, again, coming off the ACL, still looks, maybe not quite 100%. But I think if you need him this week, he's a good start.
Yeah, I mean, hard to say he's a must, but I feel really good about Gallup's chances. If you're looking for a guy with upside, he's definitely high on the list. So I really like Gallup this week. I think he's a solid start. Giants taking on the Jaguars. Got a new wide receiver one in town. It's Wan'Dale Robinson. Hopefully you stashed him. How do you feel he can do in this matchup?
In this matchup against the Jaguars, I feel fairly good. I'm not going to say a must start, but I'm going to say if you need him as a flex, you can start him.
Yeah, this is a guy I've been talking about in my waiver wire videos for a while. Look, I get he's not going to get 10 plus targets because he's on the Giants, but he's a guy who can make things happen. I think he's a really solid wide receiver 3 type, so I think he's a good start, especially against the Jags. And then speaking of the Jags, Christian Kirk, just when it looked like he was going to bust again, he did get the end zone, but what do you make of Kirk these days?
I don't know. I mean, no Marvin Jones, still not getting targeted a ton like we saw early in the season. I don't think you can bench Christian Kirk, but to me, he's just more of a flex.
Yeah, he's always just so hard to predict. This whole Jags offense has really been one of the most unpredictable in the league. I mean, you can still roll with him, but Giants defense, especially their pass defense, has been pretty good, so I don't expect great things, but you can flex him. Zay Jones, on the other hand, I think that in this matchup, I don't see enough upside. I'm going to probably keep him on my bench if I have him.
Yeah, same. Just not enough matchup. Kind of like Josh Reynolds. He needs those plus matchups, and it's not here, so going to sit him.
Colts going to take on the Titans. Glad to see Pittman's back in the must-start territory again. What about Alec Pierce? Caught that touchdown late. How do you feel about him?
I think in this matchup against the Titans, if you need to flex him, you can flex him.
He's always got that big play in him, high upside, and definitely a plus matchup. I feel good, but again, I'm not going to go crazy. I think he's a strong flex play. And now we get to talk about Paris Campbell again because all of a sudden he has appeared, got a bunch of catches and targets, and scored. Is Paris Campbell now somebody we have to think about?
Count me skeptical. I've gone down this Paris Campbell road too many times. I'm going to sit him. If he does it again this week, then I'll start considering him. But for right now, I got to sit him.
I agree. I mean, it's just way too inconsistent. I mean, let's see him put together a string. I can't guarantee that Indianapolis is going to have to throw the ball as much. So I'll just keep him on my bench if I even have him, which I don't. And on Tennessee's side, I think the only receiver worth talking about is Robert Woods. Can he do something in this matchup against the Colts?
I mean, he can do something, but it won't be on my bench because I don't have him. But if I did, it would be on my bench. I'm not starting Robert Woods.
I mean, I think he's got some flex appeal because, like I said, there's not a whole lot else in that passing game, but don't expect a lot of yardage. He's kind of touchdown dependent, and that's an iffy proposition. So I think he's kind of an iffy flex. Green Bay is going to go to Washington to take on the Commanders. Allen Lazard, always capable of a touchdown. What is he capable of against Washington?
Against Washington, probably a touchdown and maybe more. I think Allen Lazard, a good start this week.
I think it's a very good start this week, especially we know Randall Cobb might be out multiple weeks, more targets to go around. So you got to like Lazard. And you know what? I'll just come out and say I really like Romeo Doubs. Even though he didn't have a big game last week, he still got 9 targets. He's been getting targeted, and maybe it comes together against a pretty susceptible Washington secondary.
Yeah, if there's going to be a week for it to happen, this is the week. I can't put Doubs in like the must start, but I'll say he's a good flex start.
All right, now I hate to say I don't know if any of these guys are must starts, but probably looking at Taylor Heineke at quarterback. So what does that mean for Terry McLaurin?
I mean, we've already seen this, right? We saw it last year. It wasn't good. It's not going to be good this week. It's a tough matchup. I think you've got to sit Terry McLaurin.
I mean, look, you got a tough assignment with Jair Alexander on the other side. I mean, Terry's always a guy who can do things with the ball in his hand, maybe hit that deep play, maybe they pass it a lot, but he's just a flex play to me this week. And then Curtis Samuel, any hope for him?
Not this week. Let me see how he's used with Taylor Heineke. Will Heineke target him? Will the targets even be catchable? Not going to start Curtis Samuel this week.
Yeah, I know you talked about a lot of people dropping Curtis Samuel after last week. That might have been a little hasty, but I don't think you can start him. I mean, I would stash him, keep him on the bench, but I'm sitting him this week. And then possibly we see Jahan Dotson come back. If he does play, do you play him?
Now, if I'm not starting the other two, I can't start Dotson, so no.
Yeah, I agree. He was a guy who was a little touchdown dependent, so no, you can't play Dotson. All right, the Jets are going to take on the Broncos. So let's talk about the trio of Jets receivers, starting with Corey Davis. Can he do something against Denver?
Probably not. Tough matchup. I can't even say he's like worth a flex. It's just such a tough matchup. I'm going to sit Corey Davis.
Such a tough assignment. Denver has been one of the best against wide receivers. This offense not passing the ball enough. I mean, just so risky. I mean, I guess you could flex him, but you probably should look elsewhere. And then Garrett Wilson, who has disappeared pretty much off the face of the earth lately. Any hope for him?
No, one catch for 8 yards last week. I mean, just with Zach Wilson under center, they're running the ball more. This is a brutal matchup. Can't start him.
If there's one person, and just one person, who misses Joe Flacco, it's Garrett Wilson. So, no, he's just not startable at all. And on the Denver side, let's talk about Courtland Sutton. How do you think he does?
Yeah, this is going to be tough, right? He's going to get a lot of sauce. And this Jets defense isn't as bad as we thought it was going to be, but I think you still have to roll with Courtland Sutton.
Yeah, as bad as Russ has looked at times in this Denver offense, he's still the guy getting a ton of targets. I think you keep rolling with Sutton, especially the Jets. Yeah, they've been better, but it's not a dominant secondary. I'm a little worried about the sauce treatment here, but still, I'll start Sutton. And then Jerry Jeudy, what do you think?
I think you could flex him. Not a must start, but if you need him, you can flex him.
I mean, he's got that big playability. But yeah, to me, he's always going to be just kind of a flex play. So I think you can roll him, but you don't have to. Texans going to take on the Raiders. Brandon Cooks coming off a week off against this Raiders defense. High hopes for him?
I mean, about as high as it can be. With Davis Mills, you never know what you're going to get with Brandon Cooks, but the upside is there. The matchup is there. I think you have to start Brandon Cooks this week.
Yeah, let's not forget this Raiders defense has been giving up a ton of points, not necessarily to wide receivers specifically, but look, the target share will be there. I think this is a game that could be a sneaky shootout. So I will say Cooks is a pretty strong start. And then Nico Collins, I mean, he's kind of been up and down. Is there any possibility with so many good receivers on bye this week that he sneaks into any lineups?
I think you can flex him just because of the matchup again, and he's got that big playability, and we're on a lot of bye weeks, so I think you can flex him.
Yeah, I'd say only because of the matchup, and only because, like I said, guys like Jefferson and A.J. Brown and Cooper Kupp, all those guys, Stephon Diggs, they're all on bye at the same time, so you might need a guy like Nico Collins. At least he has some big playability, so he's on my flex radar. Not super high on it, but he's on there. And then Hunter Renfrow, what does he do for you?
I mean, he's always I shouldn't say always, but he has that high floor ability in PPR leagues, and this isn't a matchup that you should be worried about. So, again, another guy, if you need him as a flex, you can flex him.
Yeah, to me, though, he's kind of more low on the flex radar because I don't think they'll need to pass the ball a ton against the Texans. It's so easy to run against. I feel like he's kind of barely flexible and only in full PPR. Seahawks at the Chargers. Start with DK Metcalf. Of course, let us down last week after 2 strong weeks. What does he do in week 7?
I think we're going to see something closer to week 6. I think that week 4 and the week 5 are going to end up being the outliers here for DK Metcalf. Not a great matchup. I mean, the Chargers secondary hasn't been as good as we thought it would be, but still a good secondary. I'm not going to say you have to sit him. I'm going to say more of a flex.
Yeah, I'd say a strong flex. Actually, more like a wide receiver 3. He's a lot like the guy we're about to talk about, Mike Williams. Boom or bust. When he booms big. And when he busts, he kind of busts big. It's so hard to keep him on your bench. So I'd say he's kind of almost must-start wide receiver 3, if that makes sense. Tyler Lockett, kind of the same, but what do you think?
Yeah, kind of the same. We know he can boom, he can go off, but he can also do nothing. So for me, more of a flex start.
I agree. Always a decent flex play, and I think that's kind of what he is this week. And then Mike Williams, I mean, so hard to sit and so hard to trust. But do you have to start him?
Yeah, but it's Seattle this week, so I trust Mike Williams fully. Get him in all your lineups.
Yeah, I think this week you definitely have to feel better about him at home. And yeah, I'm not sitting Mike Williams. You got to have him in your lineup. Let's pretend that Keenan Allen actually plays. What if he plays this week? If this is the week against Seattle, is it good enough to tempt you?
Yes, because it's Seattle. I mean, again, as long as he practices all week and it's not one of those, game time decision type of things, I think you got to feel good about Keenan Allen going against Seattle.
Agree. I mean, I don't expect him to play, but if he does, then why not roll with him? And if he doesn't, does that mean Josh Palmer becomes a strong consideration?
I'm never going to say Josh Palmer is a strong consideration, but in this matchup, if you need him, you can flex him.
Yeah, again, just because there's going to be a lot of teams searching for a replacement, a streamer. I think you can stream him in this matchup, but only if Keenan Allen doesn't play. All right, the Chiefs are going to take on the 49ers. Juju Smith-Schuster, kind of out of nowhere, had a big game in Week 6. What can he do against the Niners?
I mean, I'm not expecting that again, but I think he's worth a flex start because this 49ers secondary and the whole defense really banged up right now. So I think there will be opportunities for him. You can flex him.
Yeah, even though on paper this matchup doesn't look great. Again, this is not the same 49ers defense from the beginning of the season, and it's definitely not as good as the Buffalo defense. So I think he's a pretty strong wide receiver 3 this week. McCole Hardman, I mean, he scored, but I have a feeling he's always going to be what he is, a desperation streamer.
Yeah, and even then, I'm not starting him. I mean, yeah, he could score again, but oh well, it's going to do it on my bench, not starting him.
And then there's MVS, who did pretty much nothing last week. What do you think this week?
Never starting MVS, and I can't wait for the days, weeks from now when we're talking about Sky Moore instead of MVS. But for right now, not starting MVS.
And neither am I. But what about Brandon Ayuk? I know a lot of people had him on their bench while he was going off for 2 touchdowns. That was the Falcons. This is the Chiefs. How do you feel about him?
I mean, he's always got that big play upside. You got to think the 49ers are going to have to throw more than they want in this game again. So I think he's a solid start this week.
I think he is a solid start. They're definitely going to have to pass the ball, well, kind of like they did last week. Ayuk always has that big play or touchdown upside, so not a must start, but I think he's a solid streamer. When the Steelers take on the Dolphins, well, you know what you're getting on the Dolphins side, 2 stud receivers. On the Steelers side, we have no idea. All right, so let's start with Deontay Johnson. I think it's going to be Mitch Trubisky throwing him the ball because Kenny Pickett in the concussion protocol. What does that mean for Deontay?
I think it means good things for Deontay, right? We saw early in the season when it was Mitch Trubisky, Deontay was his guy. I think we see that again. Not a must start. I mean, it's a good matchup against the Dolphins, but I'm going to say a solid start.
Yeah, I think he does get it back on the radar. I mean, last week I was saying you can't start him, and he didn't really do much, but I agree. I mean, my Dolphins definitely giving up some yardage in the secondary. And then all of a sudden, Chase Claypool emerges. I mean, is this the start of something, or was it a fluke?
I'm going with fluke. I'm not starting Chase Claypool.
All right, that was pretty quick. No, I'm not starting Chase Claypool either, despite the matchup. I mean, sure, he could do something, but I'm not going to bet my fantasy fortunes on it this week. And then George Pickens lost his QB. Does he just completely fall off the map, or you still think that he's got some juice?
I think he's got a little juice. More like a desperation flex, though. You know, a guy you're hoping hits on a big play. So, not must start, like a desperation flex.
Yeah, I streamable, but I mean, there's just a lot of risk there. So, I think you could go with him, but I think maybe you should feel a little better about Claypool this week, to be honest. And then we end the week with the Bears and the Patriots. Not necessarily a lot of firepower here with these passing games, but the Bears do have Darnell Mooney, who did make an appearance last week in the box score. Does he keep it going?
Against the Patriots, I'm not counting on it. I'm not starting Darnell Mooney.
Yeah, no way. That was against one of the worst secondaries in Washington. This is one of the best in New England. You cannot start Darnell Mooney this week. And then on the other side, you got Jacoby Myers. What do you think he does against the Bears?
This looks like a big bounce back spot for Jacoby Myers. I know he wasn't terrible last week, but kind of came back down to earth a little bit. But against the Bears, he should have tons of success. I'm starting Jacoby Myers.
Yeah, I think you definitely should. Like, you didn't boom last week as I thought, but this is definitely a good spot. Keep rolling with Myers. He's a strong start. All right, now you know how we feel about every wide receiver that matters for fantasy. What about running back, quarterback, tight end, and everything else you need to know for fantasy football? Check out our Week 7 playlist with all the advice you need to set those winning lineups.